Welcome, NutritionRadio.org listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry, University Nutrition Professor of over 20 years and podcast host of long-running shows like Iron Radio. Come on in. Classroom lecture time. Hey, everyone. This one's going to be quite brief, but I want to basically continue with some fundamentals, early lectures in the first few weeks of a Nutrition 101 class. We're going to go to a real lecture like we are wont to do with these Thinking Thursdays, if you will, or these classroom lecture time episodes. And we're going to just talk about basic terminology. What things do we lay down in a freshman-type class so you know what you're talking about? I've spoken to bodybuilders before who had wonderful, deep knowledge of some nuance of glycolysis or some biochemical pathway, but they were still a little bit lost, and you could tell when you spoke to them. That is, there would be holes in their understanding, not just mispronounced words, but deep misunderstanding on certain core issues. And that's why university courses are good, because they scaffold, they build on the basics. So let's go do that right now. Nutrition definitions and terms. This is really just a list, and we need to tackle this. One, nutrition. What is it? It's the science that links food to health and disease. Okay, nutrition. The science that links food to health and disease. Second bullet here, hunger. What is hunger? This is a biological cue to eat, right? You're weak, shaky, your stomach is growling, that your blood sugar is low. Hunger is biological. Our third bullet is appetite, and that's psychological. So you can have an appetite for something even if you're not that hungry. There used to be a bread factory in my town, for example, and even if I had just ate, if I drove past there and I smelled that delicious yeasty bread smell, baked bread smell come out of there, I would get an appetite, a taste for bread. So appetite is more of a psychological phenomenon. Our fourth bullet is satiety. This is a word that will come up multiple times in this class. Satiety just means fullness and satisfaction. Some foods are more satiating than others. The next one is chronic and acute. So chronic is long-standing. Chronic might be chronically high intakes of a certain nutrient may help or harm your health, right? The next term, though, acute, is immediate. So that's just what happens right now in a much shorter period of time. Other terms on here is kcal, a kilocalorie. We'll talk about this coming up here, but a kcal is a unit of energy content in food. Calories are not nutrients, or kcal are not nutrients. Later we'll talk about the 4-4-9 rule, where there's 4 calories in a gram of carbs, there's 4 calories in a gram of protein, and there's 9 calories in a gram of fat. So calories. And then last on this slide is the term essential. Essential means you must consume it. Your body can't make it or can't make it fast enough. So when we talk about essential nutrients, these are things you must consume or bad things are going to happen. Like, for example, you must consume vitamin C as a human being, or you'll end up with scurvy, right? Bleeding gums and scar tissue breaks down and your immune system takes a hit. Bad things happen because you didn't get that essential nutrient. So essential means must be consumed. The next slide talks about the classes of nutrients we've already talked about in here, but essentially it's carbohydrates, lipids, right, fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and water. Those are the 6 classes of essential nutrients that we talk about in almost any nutrition class, usually in that order. And then also on this slide, there are 2 key terms at the bottom. Phytochemicals, P-H-Y-T-O, those are plant compounds that have benefits to your health. They affect hormones and enzymes, like the prune study we talked about at the beginning. There's several of these. There are compounds in curry powder, for example, that are getting a lot of attention for cognition and brain health and antioxidant effects. You get the idea. Even in coffee, there are phytochemicals in coffee. Americans, some surveys suggest Americans get more antioxidants from coffee than from fruits and vegetables. Now, that's a sad commentary on our fruit and vegetable intake, but it's, in a sense, it's good that they are there. And then zoochemicals. Zoochemicals are from animals. These are nutrients that come from animals, not necessarily essential nutrients. They could be non-essential ones like creatine. which a lot of athletes use as a supplement. You get that from meats. Or carnosine. It's an antioxidant. It has other advantages that we'll talk about maybe a little bit later, but carnosine is from meats. So you get the idea. Just like there are phytochemicals from plants, there are zoochemicals from meats. Okay, so that's plenty long enough. Thank you for listening. That's topic 1 down, and we'll see you next time.
Alrighty. Again, brief and different books. Over the years, I've drawn from different types of basic nutrition books. But the idea here is, what are some of the core concepts? Maybe the most important thing that I said there was carbs, fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals, water. Those 6 essential nutrients, tons of additional terminology in each one of those, of course. But it's important to understand that that's essentially nutrition. Many of us really focus on the macros, and I think most fitness people know this because they have the most dramatic effects on things like body composition when you're dieting and that sort of thing. Vitamins and minerals, at least in RDA level doses, if you will, a little bit more limited effects. You're just trying to eliminate the deficiency diseases. Like I mentioned, scurvy, there's beriberi, there's pellagra, there's all kinds of different deficiency diseases. It is interesting to note that we have essential nutrients like vitamins and minerals. Water might seem boring to you, but actually water is probably the most essential of all of them, and maybe we'll have a future lecture about that. But hydration's a big deal, and again, it's something athletes, I think, intuitively know. You don't want to add to your training stress just because you're dehydrated, raise stress hormones and all that kind of stuff because you're not pre-hydrating and then regularly hydrating during a workout. But one of the things that I was going to mention was that carbohydrates are kind of a unique category because although they're essential nutrients, sometimes that gets debated among scientists because unlike fats where you have essential fatty acids like linoleic acid, linolenic acid, arguably EPA and DHA, or unlike proteins which are made of amino acids, about half of which are essential or indispensable amino acids. Carbs, you don't have that. Your body can actually make carbs through a process called gluconeogenesis. It's mostly your liver, right, turning non-carbohydrate sources into some blood sugar because your brain's greedy for glucose and it needs carbs. So even if you're on a keto diet or very, very low carb diet, you do maintain a certain range of blood sugar, right, because your body demands it. But again, it's really interesting to me that carbohydrates, they get a lot of crap, at least recently, in let's say the past 10 years, and I can see the argument against them in a lot of ways because we overdo them. In the past, I've written articles, are you justifying your carbs? Because if you're just eating 100 grams of carbohydrates at a time, especially refined carbs, sugars, are you training hard enough to justify that? So, it's like glycogen economy. Do they end up as stored carbohydrates in muscles and liver as what we call glycogen? Or are you just eating so much of it that, your insulin levels are high and all the time your blood sugar is always high and you're just getting fatter? But I digress. If you think something else should be on this list, again, I sample from different textbooks and even advanced stuff, primary literature on what goes into these basic terms that I share with a class when I'm trying to lay down the very fundamentals. You can't just go right to a lay book. A lot of people say, what book should I start with? I'm like, why don't you start with a university textbook? Judy Brown has one. Gordon Wardlaw has one. There's a bunch of these great entry-level textbooks, and I think that's going to serve you better than one of these, guru-type things where everybody wants to rebrand nutrition in their own image, and they come up with their own hokey terminology. It gets a little bit offensive, to be honest, because of the decades and decades of knowledge that goes into these textbooks. I mean, almost every sentence in a textbook is going to be based on some type of primary literature or, published study in some way. The quality is high. Nobody's trying to invent new categories of things to make themselves look good so they can sell a certificate or something like that. Some certificates are good for knowledge, of course, but textbooks are where it's at. So when you say, hey, Dr. Lowry, what should I start with? Start with a university textbook. If you need examples, ask. If you think I'm missing something in a basic terminology lineup like we just talked about, Tell me in the comments, like we'll back up on YouTube. I think moving forward, we're just going to back up on YouTube. It's just not worth the effort to chase the algorithm for me from a time perspective. I'd rather be here for you on a regular basis with the audio. Anyway, that's going to be it for this time with the classroom lecture, and we'll see you next time. The NutritionRadio.org podcast is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, check with your physician, nutritionist, or qualified exercise physiologist in order to make the progress that you need.